Set in the aftermath of a global catastrophe, The Midnight Sky is a quietly beautiful, visually arresting piece of sci-fi cinema with an intriguing twist ending. And hidden in the movie right from the start is a sneaky trail of clues and symbolism that point to that big reveal. Yippee-ki-yay movie lovers, I'm Jan, and in this video I'm breaking down the ending of The Midnight Sky and uncovering all the secrets you might have missed. Obviously spoilers ahead, so take care. Let's quickly recap the big twist unveiled in the final moments when Sully tells Augustine her name is Iris and her mother was Jean Sullivan, the woman he had a relationship with several decades earlier. The young Iris who suddenly appeared at the abandoned Arctic base was just an illusion created by Augustine's mind, and the film confirms this in his final scene when he imagines her alongside him, then she disappears and he faces his last moments on Earth alone, but happy in the knowledge he helped save his real daughter on the spaceship Aether. One of the most interesting pieces of symbolism in the movie that suggests a lot about the true purpose and identity of the little girl is revealed when Augustine learns from her drawing that her name is Iris. In Greek mythology, the goddess Iris was a messenger of the gods and strongly associated with communication. The film's adult Iris, who's known to her colleagues as Sully, is the comms officer on the Aether, and although the imaginary Iris mostly doesn't speak, she does listen to Augustine and tries to communicate and connect with him in other ways. Iris is also the Greek goddess or personification of the rainbow, which is often regarded as a symbol of the union of heaven and earth, another strong pointer that the little girl will be the link between Augustine and the crew of the Aether. The symbolism of the rainbow is also thematically resonant in the movie, because in the biblical story of Noah and the flood which destroyed the earth, God sent a rainbow as a message that the destruction was over and that life could begin anew. This has clear parallels to the catastrophe that befalls the earth in The Midnight Sky, and how the film ends with the sole survivors of the apocalypse, Sully and Ade, who have an arc of their own in the Aether and the ability to continue the human race. The name of the spacecraft is also curious because Aether is the name of the Greek god who personified the pure air of the upper atmosphere that the gods breathed, in contrast to the ordinary air breathed by the mortals. Again, this parallels perfectly what happens in the film, as while contamination of the regular air on Earth is rapidly rising, it's a whole different story up in space on K-23, the planet that the Aether crew has been exploring.
The air is so crisp and the planet has that smell. It's like pine trees are hidden somewhere underground waiting to burst through.
Back on the ground, another thing that points to young Iris being an imagined version of his daughter is that she only appears after Augustine learns about the active space mission. When he looks up details about the Aether, he sees the name Sullivan among the crew, which he obviously recognises as his former lover Jean's surname, so he either already knows or strongly suspects his daughter's on the ship. Augustine subconsciously creates this little girl in his mind as a way to motivate himself to stay alive, so he can connect with and save Sully and her team. His subconscious was inspired to conjure up the child after he saw a woman frantically searching for a lost daughter during the evacuation of the base, which stirred up half-buried memories of his own lost daughter. Meanwhile, up in the Aether, it seems that another little girl, Sully's unborn child, awakens Sully's feelings of abandonment by her father, and those subconscious memories surface as a nightmare that she's deserted by her partner Ade on K-23. Back in the real world, Augustine tries to reject the imaginary Iris just as he'd once done to his real daughter.
Somebody's got to be coming back for you, because I can't help you. I'm the wrong person.
Initially, his conscious mind is resistant to what his subconscious is trying to tell him, which is understandable really, as linking himself to another human being is so far removed from how he's lived his entire life. But as he spends time with the girl, they bond, and his half-buried memories start to resurface. Remember, he conjured her up, so he's the one making her draw irises, because deep down he knows her name and who she is, and it's gradually coming back to him. During their time together, he changes to someone who truly comprehends why a person would risk their own life for even the slimmest chance to be with a loved one again.
Captain Mitchell and Specialist Sanchez decided on re-entry.
They have family down here?
Yes.
I understand.
This is a huge leap from the way he shunned human contact at the start. In fact, that scene of Iris running her finger over everything in the room while Augustine attempts to make contact with the Aether for the first time is particularly intriguing.
No touching.
There's several things going on here. First, this moment represents adult Iris, aka Sully, who's repeatedly and desperately trying to make contact from her ship with anyone she can reach out to. We even see Sully at her comms desk later, self-soothing by touching her fingers over and over, just before Augustine makes his first contact with her from Lake Hazen. Also, when you consider that young Iris is imaginary, what this moment where she touches everything also shows is Augustine projecting onto Iris the longing he has to connect with other human beings, especially his daughter, before he dies.
That's why I have to contact them. Now. Before it's too late.
Speaking of being too late, curiously in this scene, Iris runs her hand over a solitary astronaut in a globe, which is next to an hourglass, reinforcing that feeling that time is indeed running out. Going back to the very beginning of the movie, there's a really interesting detail when the camera focuses on a little statue that looks a lot like the Egyptian god Anubis. This is significant because Anubis is a god of death, and one of his main roles is ushering souls into the afterlife. And clearly in the film, death has come for almost all humankind. Augustine, however, decides to throw the statue in the trash, indicating that although he's terminally ill and humanity is on the verge of extinction, he's rejecting death and choosing to hold on to life. And this is an early pointer to how before he dies, he'll help save the last human survivors of the Aether. On top of that, one of Anubis' roles as god of death is to assess the worth of human souls. And although Augustine's name means great or venerable, and he knows he's accomplished great things in his professional career, he has regrets over his personal life and his failed relationship with Jean and the daughter he never really knew. So when he decides to make the perilous journey from the Barbo Observatory to Lake Hazen, he's able to address his personal failures in his life by finally reaching out to his daughter and also warning her of the dangers of returning to Earth. In this way, I think he hopes to feel at peace by the time death inevitably takes him. In their last moments together, Sully describes how the light reflecting off Jupiter makes all the colours explode on K23.
It's like landing in Oz and seeing real colour for the first time.
This is particularly poignant as thanks to his daughter's explorations of K23 with her crew, he's able to experience vicariously the planet he discovered but will now never see. But even more crucially, in this moment, he's able to deeply connect with his daughter, speaking and listening to her in reality, while holding her young hand in his imagination. And like Dorothy arriving in the land of Oz, when Augustine lets another human being into his life like this, it's as if the sepia world in which he's isolated himself for so many years turns into glorious Technicolor. Indeed, without Iris, Augustine might well have never made it to Lake Hazen and would certainly never have known the bliss of real human connection. And without Augustine and his eventual craving for attachment, adult Iris wouldn't have known the threat facing Earth, and she also wouldn't have a habitable planet where she and her soon-to-be-born daughter can survive. In the end then, by reaching out, they saved each other. And there are further hints that young Iris is really a vision, including the snowstorm where she disappears suddenly for no obvious reason when Augustine pushes her behind him, then suddenly reappears out of a bright light after the storm passes, replacing a vision of Jean. But long before that hallucination of his former lover, there's a massive hint to the film's finale in Augustine's youthful memory of Jean telling him she's not pregnant.
Just a possible sighting of a life form that ultimately proved false.
Which is exactly what the young girl at the base turns out to be. A life form Augustine thinks he sees, but she actually turns out not to be real. Nevertheless, that little girl clad in a bright yellow dress is Augustine's Polaris, his North Star.
Polaris. It's the most important star in the sky. If you ever get lost, it'll help you find your way.
And young Iris does help the lost Augustine find his way both literally and figuratively, setting him on his journey to human connection after a lifetime of isolation, and despite the many hazards, leading him along and propping him up to get to Lake Hazen, where there's a stronger antenna to make connection with the Aether. And a cool detail connecting Augustine with the spaceship his daughter's on is the ornate handle design of his rifle, which closely matches the elaborate interior design of the Aether and its white structures that look like plants or human blood vessels, and therefore hint at the life-supporting and indeed humanity-saving nature of the spacecraft. The idea that humans ultimately need to connect with each other is highlighted visually repeatedly throughout the film, but it also comes up in the lyrics of the song Sweet Caroline that the crew of the Aether blast out during their spacewalk to repair the ship. We can't play it without getting copyrighted, but you can see from the lyrics just how much the film wants to talk about human connection. A big clue that also foreshadowed the melancholy end of The Midnight Sky was a classic movie On the Beach that we saw Mitchell watching. Similar to George Clooney's movie, the 1959 film starring Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner is set in the aftermath of a nuclear war that's wiped out the northern hemisphere with radioactivity, spreading to the southern hemisphere. Spoiler alert, by the end of On the Beach, many US Navy crews stationed in Australia decide to return home to the US to die, and that foreshadows Mitchell's decision to leave the ether to return to Earth to find his family, even though almost certain death awaits him. And in an intriguing coincidence, young Augustine in Midnight Sky is actually played by Gregory Peck's grandson, Ethan Peck. So did you see the twist coming in The Midnight Sky, and what other interesting details did you spot or enjoy in the movie? If you liked this video, a thumbs up is hugely appreciated, and you can tap here for more videos you're sure to like. Thanks for watching and see you next time, yippee-ki-yay movie lovers!